Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Bufnagle the podcast, where we explore entertaining and enlightening discussions of the adventure of life and all things good. From science and technology to history and philosophy to leadership and success. We hope to give you a better understanding of the world and skills for everyone to pursue their own adventure.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Bufnagle the podcast.
Did you start this? Did you really start this episode while you're eating?
I did. I have a cookie in my mouth. Can you tell? Well, we talk about all good things and delicious Publix cookies in the pursuit of the adventure of life. I'm Harry. I'm joined here by Rafe, and we also have a special guest, Big Brain Smart Head Matthew, with us today. But before we pass it off to him, Rafe, I'm going to pass it off to you so you can thank our beautiful, wonderful listeners.
Yeah, this is a thing that we here at the Buff are eternally grateful for the listeners that have made us a Global Top 10% podcast. We appreciate you every time you show up and for all the things you do for us. It is great to have you here as part of the Buff team. Remember, you can reach us at bufnagle@bufnagle.com. Remember to share the love, share the buff, get new listeners so that you don't feel so alone. That would be a great thing. Give us a 5-star review. Remember to subscribe, hit like, hit follow, smiley stars. Those little buttons you can push on there, as long as there's something positive, hit them. Avoid the ones that are negative. Remember to tell a friend to listen, and you will get a free episode. Our special guest today is I've known this man his whole life, and it's
as have I.
That's right. So, and he has known us his whole life. So that's the thing. It is Harry, none other than your cousin and my nephew, a world traveler and a nature lover, a really smart, big brain, smart head guy, a French horn player, a hockey goalie, and an all-around fine young man and husband, currently living in Connecticut, but we won't hold that against him. Matthew, how are you this evening?
I'm great. A thunderstorm just started, so I'm enjoying being inside and hearing the thunder and the heavy rain and hanging out with family.
And all right, this podcast ends short. You know why?
Well, we're supposed to get some rain tonight too, so we'll see how that all works out. Matthew, you have spent so you are a young man and you have recently been married, and that's a wonderful thing. And then you and your lovely bride absconded to you were in exile there in Ireland, and you did some fun things in Ireland.
Yes. So we got married in May of 2021. So a week after we graduated, got married, and we both got fellowships to earn our masters in Ireland. So I was at University College Dublin. My wife was at Trinity College Dublin. We were both studying environmental science, but at different schools.
Oh, wait. So is there like a rivalry, like, the Cougars against the Wildcats?
No, just one leprechaun and a different leprechaun.
Do they have mascots there in schools?
I think there might have theoretically been a mascot, but I was never introduced to the mascot or heard anything about it. And supposedly there was a deep rivalry, that went back in time for decades, but I never actually experienced that. Just when I told people that my wife was at Trinity and I was at UCD, they would say, "Oh, how do you
get along?"
Yeah, it's fine. No, I didn't know I wasn't supposed
to. It's like Duke Carolina, man. It's like, okay, yeah, okay. Well, okay. So you both earned master's degrees there in environmental science, and you studied bees. Is that right? Because we're big bee fans,
You should be a bee fan. I did study bees, and I sort of accidentally went into that. So the way it works, like the master's system works there, is you can either do a research master's or a course master's. And I did a course master's, and
of course
there was a list of projects I could do, and there was one with like looking at native bees and how their evolution is shaped by these different traits of the bees. And I thought that was kind of interesting. So I put that one first on my list and was chosen for that one. And yeah, got thrown face first into the wonderful world of bees.
Into the beehive that is apiary science. So, okay, so
does that make you an apiologist?
It makes me a melitologist.
Wow.
So,
there's some Latin in there.
Expand.
Please expand.
Yeah, so apiologists or aparists or whatever you say can only work with one specific group of bees, which is the family Apidae. So if you go through your like hierarchy of animals, right, there's like
kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species. Yeah, huh?
Exactly. Yeah. So there's that. So apiologists can technically only work with Apidae, the family.
The family. Okay.
But a melitologist can deal with any sort of bee, because
so are they
comes from the Latin word for bee or Greek word for bee.
So what was the word again?
Melitology.
So melitology, you can be all you can be.
All bees are yeah, okay. So melitology is that like the next level up? Is that like the class, the order, and then the family Apides is underneath that?
Oh, it's some, because there's your kingdom, phylum, class, whatever, but there's like subclass, infraphylum, these random.
Okay, yeah. So they've changed these rules from when Linnaeus did all this stuff. Okay, right. All right. So I got to ask this then. So the people I know who are the bees we've talked about before, we are big bee fans because we love honey. That's where it really starts, and we like flowers too, and crops. We like
we like the buff, and all those things start with the letter B.
Yes,
brownies.
Yes. Okay. So, how many? Like, what are the bees like in Ireland, and what are the things? How did your understanding of bees changed when you went into this program? What did you know that you knew you knew? What did you know that what did you not know that you knew you didn't know? And what did you not know that you didn't know you didn't know?
Yeah, well, I'll ask you.
Okay.
Describe for me, Harry and Uncle Rafe, describe for me a bee. Like, I'm going to draw a bee right now. Tell me what I should be drawing.
Okay, you should draw an insect. Okay, you're going to put 6 legs on it. You're going to put
antennae.
Oh yeah. And they're going to put
eyes with lots of little eyes inside of them.
Oh yeah. Okay. Compound eyes.
The mandibles.
Oh, I think 2 wings. Only 2 wings, I would guess. And then I think
an abdomen and a stinger.
Yeah, and I was going to say that they live like communally, but they don't, because some of them are just by themselves.
The really big bumblebees are really dumb. There's honeybees,
which are awesome,
which are great. There's wasps that look like bees, and for the purposes of this not being an explicit rated podcast, are just really evil. And then there's some other bees, bumblebees, carpenter bees. They kind of just destroy your deck. That's about all I know.
And then there's also killer bees, which is always interesting because that's on the edge of the like pop culture kind of thing, is killer bees, and those are like Africanized bees. And then but I guess, I think the things we really like are honeybees, and we see bumblebees, and generally we don't want to get too close to them because they can sting us. That's how I think about bees. And then you get to wasps, but ants are a lot like wasps. And the word Hymenoptera comes to mind, and I don't really know what that means.
Yeah, honeycomb's delicious.
Oh yeah, there you go. Yeah. All right, so how'd we do?
I think that was pretty good. So Hymenoptera, that's the order. If we're going through our list, Hymenoptera is the order. Okay. And it has the wasps, the ants, the bees, a few other things. So that was great. And I feel like we did a good job capturing the diversity of bees. There are carpenter bees, which live on their own. There are honeybees, which live in these massive hives. There are bumblebees, which are kind of stupid and live in smaller hives. No offense to the bumblebees.
But there's hornets and stuff, like, right?
Yeah, so those are not bees, but they're in Hymenoptera.
Okay.
So for those of us who are less biology based in our schooling, can you go through the basic animal kingdom classes and order and hierarchy for us?
Okay, now Matthew's going to give you he's going to give you the mnemonic for remembering these, and my mnemonic for remembering them is to just remember them. Okay, so I'm going to say kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species. So That's what I'm going to say.
And then can you give me an example for each one as we go down to the bees?
All right, Matthew, give us the mnemonic, and then tell us where we are with bees.
Yeah. Okay. So the mnemonic that I was taught, and that I taught my students this year, was "Dear King Philip came over for good spaghetti."
Okay. So deer is
I think they
D.
got spaghetti over in England.
Okay. So now I got to remember the mnemonic, and then I have to remember how to translate the mnemonic.
So deer
is
deer's domain, right?
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay. Domain.
And if I remember correctly,
king must be kingdom.
Yeah. Then there's kingdom, and there.
Can you give me an example of what kingdom means?
A kingdom is either plants or animals, or like
fungi.
There's fungi, and then there's like weird things, like stuff that lives in ocean vents and weird stuff. Okay.
Yeah. So bees are in kingdom Metazoa, the animals.
Okay.
And then we move on to phylum, which is Philip.
Okay. And phylum Philip is what, like, is that like vertebrates and invertebrates, and because they don't have backbones, they have no bones.
Yeah. Phylum would be, for example, like for the insects, it's arthropods.
Arthropods. Okay.
So, or like, I had to teach all my students what all the phyla were. Like the cnidarians are phylum. So that's like your jellyfish, your corals, and a few other things that sting you are in phylum Cnidaria. So these are still really big groups.
Okay. King of phylum. Class.
Class is coming over for good spaghetti. So then,
yes. And who's the class then?
The bees are in class, I believe it's class Hexapoda, which is the things with 6 legs.
Oh,
Hexapoda.
It might be Insecta. I feel
they're not Insecta because that'd be strange.
It's class Insecta. I just remember it was class Insecta, but that was back 100 years ago when I took Don Friedman's nature study class in Hereford, Wisconsin. So that was.
And that was on a previous episode.
Yes. So King of phylum class order is Hymenoptera, you said.
Order is Hymenoptera, which is like a narrow waist.
Oh, okay. Mm-hmm. Right. Family.
Family is there's so many families
of bees.
Of bees, yeah. There's
okay. So now we're down into the branch of different types of bees.
Yeah. So if you're an apidologist, then you can only study one family,
which is Apides.
Mm-hmm.
And now the other ones, where are the wasps? Are they? They're a different family?
They are a different family.
Do we know what they are, or is that wasn't your area of study? I don't think. Am I right on that?
There's many. So the paper wasps are in Vespides, like the big orange ones that sting you are the Vespids. There's a bunch of parasitic wasps, so they're in Ecumonidae. Yeah, there's lots of families.
Okay, all right. And then what about those gigantic European hornets that are the size of my thumb, but they're the only hornets, or the only bees, or the only whatever those are that are attracted to light, like a
those
moth.
are the ones that fall under something entirely different called things that Satan made. And
there's an adage that says God made the bee, but the devil made the wasp. Have you heard that?
I have not.
Okay, now have you heard that, Matthew?
I think I have.
Was that in your class? You didn't learn that in class. Okay, so you studied all kinds of bees under that meta thing, right? What was it?
Melitology.
Okay, so you studied melitology, all kinds of bees, and our little honeybees are just a subset of them. And so, when you study the bees, what are the questions that are in the that are in the research realm now?
Well, there's a lot of people who are interested in like how the social bees, like the honeybees and the bumblebees, how they've developed these massive hives, and how is there a queen and these workers, and why don't they just all live on their own? And that's very interesting, but it's not my thing.
Okay.
So I want to save the bees.
Save the bees. Okay.
I'm interested in these bees being here for my kids to see, and for their kids to see. So I'm interested in trying to make that happen, and trying to use evolution to make that happen, or understand how bees evolved and how they used to evolve and how they will evolve in order to save them today.
Now, so what's the current, I'm going to ask about the US because that's where I live, but I have to say that probably other places are similar, but we probably have unique ways of doing this, is a lot of bees are domesticated here in the States. Certainly with regard to honeybees, I would venture that there are very few rogue or what are the feral bee colonies out there, because when there is one, people grab them and they domesticate them, put them in a box, right? I mean, that's what they do. So is that good for the bees or is that bad for the bees? Or both?
Which bees are we talking about? The honeybees? Like, is it
I'll start with the honeybees. Yeah, start with the honeybees.
Well, in North America, it's great because there would be no honeybees here if they hadn't initially been domesticated.
Oh, where did they come from? Where did our bees come from?
They are the European honeybee.
No way. Okay, yeah. So what bees are endemic, to North America?
Oh, so many. So the reason why it's hard to say exactly is there are over 20,000 species of bees in the world.
Okay, didn't see that coming. Wait, I thought you were going to say
number.
20,000 species.
Yes.
Of bees.
And that's different than breeds. The orange ones, the purple ones, the red ones.
Yeah, and then there's all the different bee teams, like Georgia Tech, and and then there are college bees, and there are spelling bees and geography bees. Okay, but there's 20,000 species of bees that you worry about.
I'm over here trying to think of other bee puns as you keep talking, and I'm failing, so I just decided to interrupt you anyway.
Okay, so all right, so there's a lot of bees, and we in North America really have European honeybees, but there were murder hornets in Washington a while ago, and have they gained a foothold now in the Americas, or what should we think about the murder hornets?
I think let other people worry about the murder hornets.
Okay.
Yeah. So if you're a beekeeper in the Pacific Northwest, maybe you should be a little worried. But it seems to me like the Fish and Wildlife Service has a handle on it, in the USDA.
Oh, really? Okay, great. So the USDA kind of oversees our honeybee population, right? Is that do you have to? Do you know what you have to do this? I mean, are you guys going to get bees?
No, I don't plan on becoming a beekeeper, but I know in Connecticut you have to register your beehive if you have one, and it's something like $5 or something like that. It's very inexpensive, and I think the idea is just so that they know where colonies of stinging bees are. But that's helpful for them to know, because this is how you start a fight if you're with people who care about bees. But there's some evidence that that hives of honeybees are actually bad for all the native bees, because they hog the flowers and they take all the pollen and they take all the nectar, and then the native bees can't get it. But there have been 500 studies on that, and 250 say there is a negative effect and 250 say there isn't.
Well, I guess anytime you have so these European honeybees that people have in their hives, are they what's the genetic diversity across those honeybees? Because I would think, when I was studying bison, is that there's a very obviously with the North American bison there's very little genetic diversity because of the bottleneck that took place 150 years ago or so, when we were down to 100 animals. And it turns out that if you go study the bison population now, most bison are domesticated in the U.S., outside of the ones that are in wildlife preserves. And it turns out you can trace almost all the male bison to four different guys, four different very studly bison men, right? And so that leads to some problems, right? And are the bees in a similar situation? There's there were 5 basic bee colonies in 1950, and now everybody's is that where we are? Or what do we see from an evolutionary standpoint for domesticated and then on feral bees? That what are we seeing? What are we seeing?
Well, I think I was surprised by how much diversity is actually in what are the Western honeybees or the European honeybees, these domesticated ones. It's actually quite high, which is surprising, and I think that's because they're everywhere. and beekeepers are always moving their hives around the country to follow, the crops and whatnot. And so if that happens to line up with the breeding or with when the bees, split their colonies because they get too big, then they're forcing a lot of immigration to happen. So that's
Okay, so how does that immigration take place? Because you're talking about interbreeding, and I'm thinking like suddenly I realized as you were saying that I don't understand how the bees how that happens. I know we got a queen. I can go on the internet tonight before we're done recording. I could probably have a queen bee sent to me, right? And then I can get a queen, and bees will show up and say I want to be with this queen, or something will happen. All right, and I can get a colony of bees to follow this queen, but how do the bees reproduce, and where do they get the genetic variation?
How do they determine the queen?
Yeah,
if the queen dies,
yeah,
right? The queen dies. What happens to the hive?
Yeah. Okay. Go.
Okay, this is a lot of questions. So, how do they reproduce? How do they determine the queen? How do they? Yeah. Okay. So I'll start with the first one, which is what I know more of. And there are sort of two ways that you get new colonies. So one is if the first colony gets too big, then the queen will make a new queen, ship her out, and like half the hive will go with her.
It's a great schism.
And the hive sort of splits itself into two.
It is a schism. That's right.
Yeah, there's a schism. Or it's like, a plant budding or something, right? So that's one way. And then boom, new hive. But there's also more of a yearly approach where the queens will make lots of males and then lots of females. And all the males go fly away. And then all the females go fly away. And the female will mate with, depending on who you ask, either one or many males, and then start her new hive. And she keeps actually all of the sperm from that male for the rest of her life. She never mates again. So she just has this bag of sperm. And
now you said a female. Do you mean, is that like a queen or just a regular female?
A female queen. I should be more clear. Yeah.
So the drones mate with the queen. The queen takes all.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But that's from her own tribe. And then they're not. They're from.
No. So
okay.
They'll typically send out the males first.
Okay.
And so the males sort of have a head start and they start flying around. And then later the females come out, and hopefully at this point your own males.
The females, the queens?
Yeah, the queens. The queen. Okay. Hopefully by the time the queens leave, or the future queens, then
they get snatched out of the air like eagle claws.
Yeah,
by the male, and then they go somewhere.
Well, but not the male, by the males, right? By multiple ones, you said.
It depends on who you ask.
Okay,
we're asking you.
We're asking, and we want to know, why do people have different opinions? Is this not known, or is it different species do different things?
Within the domesticated honeybees, right? There's one species, at least in North America. So Japan has its own domesticated species, and the Africanized honeybees have their own species. But within the Apis mellifera, so the Western honeybees that we have here in the U.S., part of it is I don't know for sure, so
that's okay. That's right.
Say,
that's fine.
But I know with other species of bees, there's a lot of uncertainty. Some people have done tests and they say, oh yeah, they've only mated with one male, and then other people say no, look at all the diversity. They must have mated with multiple males. So it's very species specific and is also unknown.
Okay, so the queen pretty much just lays eggs all the time, right? Isn't that what she's doing when she's doing her normal everyday job? Right, she's putting eggs into these little cells that people are
chasing the other little ones around, putting diapers on the new bees. Yes, yeah, it's very busy.
She doesn't even have to change the diaper. She has all her.
No, she's got workers for that, Harry. All she does is lay egg. Now, so those eggs that she's laying, they're already fertilized, right? Because of the spermatozoa she got from the. Are they? So I'm confused. Are the females all clones of each other? Are they diploid or haploid? What's going on with the genetics? And Help me. What's going on?
Yeah. So the males are all haploid. So they only have one set of chromosomes.
Okay.
As humans, we have two.
Right.
But the males actually only have one.
Okay.
And they are all there. That one is like from their mom. It's not from any of the sperm. It's just from mom.
So they're all clones.
Yes.
All the males from that queen are all clones. They're all twins. Or they're all the same.
That's my understanding, but we're getting into dangerous territory.
That's okay. That's right. Just feel free. Make a mistake. Who cares? It's the buff. It's all good. So, but the females are not. The females are different.
I don't know about the females. For some,
okay.
I have in my head that the worker females are all clones, but I can't tell you how that works, which makes me think that's not true.
Okay, that's fair.
The queens, when she goes to make the queens, I know that's when the sperm from all these males she mated with comes in.
Okay, and she just does that.
Mated with these males months ago,
right?
And then there's some sort of cue that says either the colony's getting too crowded or the weather's changing. Time to make new queens.
And she will make more than one queen. She'll make lots of queens.
She'll make many because she only makes one, and then that one gets eaten by a bird or whatever. Then it's the end of the line.
All right, so those queens go out and they do queen. They try to set up a new hive. They find a male and they colonize a new tree or a new box in somebody's field or something like that. And then, so what if I go and buy a queen on the internet? How do the bee guys get them? Do they find them in their hives and say, oh, there's an extra queen. I'm going to grab her and I'll put her in this box and I'll sell her on the internet?
Yeah. So the queen will, she has to lay the queen eggs.
Right.
They're the eggs that will become queens. And then they grow up into the larvae that become queens.
And there's royal jelly in here somewhere, right? Isn't there royal jelly?
Yeah. So you can tell which one the future queen hives are going to be because like the eggs look different and the larvae look different and the food is different. So they get pampered from being babies. So that's, if you're a beekeeper, you can go in and you can find who the new queens are going to be.
Harry, you seem distressed.
I'm not distressed. I just want to get, I don't know. I want to be pampered.
Well, I don't. I think now most of these. So, how long will the queen live?
Ooh,
I mean, is this an annual thing?
It's my understanding is that in domestic hives, it's a few years.
Couple years.
If your hive is going well.
Okay.
But if there are any beekeepers, watching us record live, feel free to put it in the comments. Or what is it? Bufnagle at bufnagle.com.
Yes, that's it. What is it? As if you don't know. Yes, it is bufnagle.com. Okay, so that's the domestic bees. Now, are the feral bees singing from the same hymnal? Or are they doing something?
You keep saying feral bees, and I'm imagining cats with wings. Right?
Like the Wizard of Oz.
Just like this little orange tabby cat floating around with these tiny little buzzer things. And
misbehaving.
Instead of bzzz, going meow.
That's a feral. I always think about feral children is the idea that always comes to mind, and those are ones that are not domesticated. I guess is that not the right word? Is that the word used?
I just like to have an outlandish vision in my mind.
Yes, that's right.
Harry's onto something though. So when you say feral in the bee world, people will often think of like feral cats, but with bees. So like colonies of honeybees that are on their own now.
Okay, so that was the right word.
But if we're talking about like other types of bees, like leaving honeybees aside, then you would say wild.
Wild bees. Wild. Okay, that's a fair specification. That's right. Okay, so what do the wild bees do then? Are they running the same kind of scheme?
They do everything, the whole spectrum. So there are the feral or the wild, honeybees. So and things that are similar. For example, like in Brazil, like the traditional method of getting honey is from tribes of stingless bees. So they live just like honeybees, really, but they can't sting, which is quite nice.
That's nice for the beekeeper.
Yeah, so we call those eusocial. So they're good at being social.
So EAU, you, or EU?
Social.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
You social. All right. All right.
And so that's when they have a well-defined queen. She's the queen her whole life. And bumblebees are like that too.
They're you social.
They're eusocial.
Really? Okay.
So there's a bumblebee queen, and every spring the queens will come out of the ground, find a new nest, or mate, find a new nest, and make their new colony.
So how? Okay, so this is a thing because I think about bumblebees every now and then. I see them on Canadian Thistle and stuff like that, right? But they're actually from a hive.
Yes, almost all of them. But there are also some honeybees who are not eusocial; they're parasitic.
Wait, honeybees
Or bumblebees. Sorry, there are some
bumblebees.
bumblebees.
Okay,
Are these the ones that like invade honeybee hives?
No, they'll invade other bumblebee hives.
Oh, okay.
They'll kill the queen and pretend to be the queen, and then the bumblebees whose hive they've taken over will take care of her babies, and she will live as though she was their queen.
That's like those birds do that too, right? They lay their eggs in other birds' nests and kick the other. Okay, wow,
but
I did not know.
Kill the parents.
Well, yeah, but they need the parents for food, so that's
right.
Wow. Okay, so bumblebees can be nasty or good.
Yes.
Do we have both kinds like just running around here, or do they live in different areas?
Ooh, I won't be able to tell you about Central Indiana.
Okay,
but I can tell you Ireland. I believe Ireland has both, but it only has, I think, one species, or has very few of these parasitic bumblebees.
Okay, all right. That's good to know, I guess. So, all right. Are you going to be studying bees at your new grad school thing?
I am. And the bees I'm studying are going to be not eusocial or parasitic. So I'm going to be studying solitary bees. So these are all on their own.
Sounds awfully lonely. Do they get depression?
Dude, no, they've evolved that way, Harry. They're just naturally like that. It's in their nature.
I worry about them. In today's climate, they could get depressed real quick.
Yes.
So they spend a lot of time outside, so that helps.
Okay,
them.
good point.
It gives them
good
the endorphins they need.
And do they make vitamin D?
Do they? I don't know.
Okay. Well, maybe you could be your research. Okay, so you're going to study solitary bees, and I mean, so what are the questions around solitary bees that need to be answered? I mean, I'm not saying that in a mocking tone. I'm curious. Like, obviously there are questions that people have. So what are they?
I'm excited to know how these solitary bees are working out in cities. Because there's all these initiatives, like No Mow May and pollinator gardens and plant native plants. And they've done a great job of increasing the numbers of bees, or the numbers of most species of bees.
Okay.
But so far, almost no one has actually looked at whether that's increasing this genetic diversity that you mentioned earlier, or whether these, different pockets of bees, like, whether one pollinator garden is actually connected with the other pollinator garden, and can the bees move back and forth between them? Are they mating between each other? Or are these like different islands in the city that eventually are going to fizzle out?
Well, you fizzle out, or either that or evolve to be different than their neighbors. It'll be like a little bit of New Zealand right there in New York City.
Yeah, the Galapagos Islands, but within a city. Maybe, but no one knows.
Do you ever reach a point where, because of this genetic diversity, you end up creating another species?
Not in cities yet, but this is like the main idea of how new species form, is that they get separated from each other.
Right.
And when they get separated from each other, then they evolve to their local climate.
Right.
And then once you put them back together, it's too late. But we would have to wait, I think, a very long time in a city for that to happen.
So what's the kind of genetic, what's the kind of generational thing for bees? Like times, like for humans, it's like 25 years generation, right? Maybe as low as 15, but you typically go about 25 years. But, one reason some people that I know study things like nematodes is because they have very short intergenerational times. Are bees, is that like a year? Is like everybody that year is kind of considered the same The same. They're all brothers and sisters at that point.
I would say your baseline is a year.
Baseline is a year. Okay.
But some species will have 2 generations a year or 3 generations a year.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. And then there are others actually. And one of my old lab mates, figured this out. There are some species who most of their kids come out every year, but a few of them actually wait a whole year in the nest and then come out the year after they were born.
Like cicadas.
What are they doing for so long?
They're just asleep.
They're just watching hockey highlights.
Yeah. Well, so okay, the egg gets laid in this little cell, right? In this in somewhere in a comb, and it gets fed, and the larvae turns into this. Whatever. It becomes this thing, right? It goes through this stage, and it becomes a winged adult. And these things do they get stuck in a developmental stage, or do they make it to adulthood and they just kind of hide?
So I'm going to let you guess based on all the other answers.
I'm going to guess that they get stuck in a gestational stage and don't progress. That's what I'm going to guess.
So it's both. So
as with every other answer here.
Yeah.
Okay.
So some of them do. They stay as like a pre-adult or like late in that pupa stage, like late in their cocoon. You can think of it. And they just stay
a really lazy teenager.
Yeah, it's a lazy teenager who never bothers going to high school. All right.
But some of them actually develop into adults, and then they spend the whole winter as an adult.
Okay, so in order to figure this out, was this lab mate like tagging all these bees and watching who came and went? And you were like, wait a minute, you're a leftover from last year? How do you measure that?
So he was studying like ground nesting bees. So these are solitary bees that just dig like a tunnel in the ground, sometimes like 3 feet into the ground.
Yeah.
And then lay their eggs and like offshoots off this tunnel.
Okay.
And so he dug up some of these nests and brought them into the lab and raised them in the lab and noticed that only like half of them woke up. But he wasn't just going to throw away the rest. He was like, okay, well, like they look healthy, so I'll just keep them and see what happens. And then the next year, out they came.
Wow. Okay. This feels like it's got a connection with my cicada friends, but I would have to we'd have to get do you have a cicada friend who would know about cicadas?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we may have to bring him or her on to talk about these sorts of things. Matthew, our goal was to talk about you in Ireland and then in Iceland and now in Connecticut, but we kind of got stuck on bees, which is a great place to get stuck because there's honey involved. There's like a Winnie the Pooh joke in there somewhere. But
we're bears of very little brains.
Yeah, the buff is a bear of very little brain. Matthew, thank you for joining us. We're going to have a discussion about how we can get this conversation back on track and maybe have you back to do some more conversations with either me and Harry or just me or whatever we do to learn some more about our insect friends. And I hope you would be amenable to that.
That sounds great. Thanks for the chance to chat. It was fun.
Yeah, Matthew, it was great chatting with you, learning a whole lot about bees. And in the meantime, while our listeners wait for the episode next week, we remind you to purchase some local honey, seek the good, live virtuously, and flourish, and enjoy the adventure of life. It's going to be a great day.